From my story to your story, let's talk about grief. I will share my own grief journey, along with interviewing others about their path of sorrow and healing. I hope that you, the listener, will hear something that helps as you navigate your own grief, and that God will be glorified along the way. This content is meant as a discussion and not to give professional help. Let's get started.
Well, I had gone to a regularly scheduled mammogram.
Okay.
I did not feel anything. I did not expect any kind of earth-shattering news or anything. And there were 2 chairs in front of the doctor's desk, but I was sitting on the left seat behind the chairs.
Okay.
Like, I did not want to be that close to the doctor.
I don't want to be in that chair.
I don't know what he's going to say. And the doctor started talking, and he said, I've been doing this a long time, and of course you're going to have a biopsy, but I can say with certainty that you have breast cancer. And, I just left work half a day to go have this, and I said, I'll be back. And I was like, it was crazy.
Life-changing moment, literally.
I just could not comprehend what was happening to me.
And that's fine, Anna, if you're watching on YouTube, to like and subscribe. If you are listening on the podcast, please like and follow. We would love for you to do that now to help our channel grow and become a blessing to
I
others.
have here with me today my friend Angie Clark-Matee, and I'm thankful for her giving some of her time to talk with us about the grief and also the hope that comes after an illness that is life-changing. In her case, she's had cancer, and not only one time, but 2 times, and she's been through a variety of treatments and things that we're just, I'll let her tell all of that, but I'm thankful for her talking to me today about unpacking all that goes with a cancer diagnosis. So Angie, first of all, with the first cancer, when were you first diagnosed with cancer? And
I was diagnosed in February of 2012.
Okay. And what would you tell us about that circumstance? Like how did it come about? How did you find out?
Well, I had gone to a regularly scheduled mammogram.
Okay.
I did not feel anything. I did not expect any kind of earth-shattering news or anything. But, they took the pictures that they do, and then they asked me if I would go and if I had time to have an ultrasound, and I did. Then I went back in the little room and waited, and they said, do you have anybody with you?
Oh.
And I was like, that does not sound good.
No.
And they told me I could get dressed, and the lady waited outside the door, and then when I opened the door, she was standing there, and she said, I'm going to take you down to Dr. so-and-so's office, and actually he was still there the second time. So she said, I'm going to take you down here, and I just want you to wait here for a few minutes. And then I never saw her again. A few minutes later, even though it seemed like a long time, it wasn't. A few minutes later, the doctor came in, and a lady came in who was just in regular attire, not like scrubs or anything. She came in, and she had a pink bag. And I was sitting on a love seat, and there were 2 chairs in front of the doctor's desk, but I was sitting on the left seat behind the chairs.
Okay.
Like, I did not want to be that close to the doctor.
I don't want to be in that chair.
I don't know what he's going to say. And so I was just sitting there, just kind of like thinking in my head, what is he going to tell me? And that's when the lady came in, and she sat beside me, like about as far apart as we're sitting. And the doctor started talking, and he said, I've been doing this a long time, and of course you're going to have a biopsy, but I can say with certainty that you have breast cancer.
I don't know that I've ever heard of someone who knew right then, like just right after the mammogram.
He told me, I can tell you with certainty that you have it. he said, but, you know, you're going to have a biopsy and blah, blah, blah. And then after that, I didn't hear anything he was saying. I could see his mouth moving, and it was kind of like, you know, Charlie Brown, the teacher.
Yes.
That's exactly like what it was. And I'm just sitting there looking at him, and I'm thinking, I should be paying attention, but I can't focus. And then the lady scooted over next to me and put her arm around me, and I just kind of like snapped. So I was like, oh, you know, don't touch me. You don't know me. I don't know you. I got to process this, please. And she said, I understand. And she was very nice. And I wasn't trying to be mean to her. I was just like, what is happening here, you know? And she scooted back over, and she put the bag between us. And then that kind of brought me back into reality. And he said, she's going to escort you down the hall to the breast specialist, and they're going to make an appointment for you to have a biopsy. And I was like, okay. And, you know, I just left work half a day to go have this, and I said, oh, I'll be back. And I was like, it was crazy.
Life-changing moment, literally.
I just could not comprehend what was happening to me. I couldn't. And I couldn't tell. I didn't know what to think. I remember driving back, and I was like, should I go back to school? Should I go home? You know,
who do I call? What do I do?
I didn't know what to do, actually. And I just went back to the school.
Did you?
And the teacher that I worked with, she said, how did it go? And I said, they think I have cancer. She said, what? Just like, what? You know?
So
and I was
really, it's like you're in shock.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
I would say you were in shock.
Yeah, I was. Yeah. I was like, I said, I'm only 46. How can this be?
Yeah.
And he said, cancer does not discriminate. He said, against age, race, economic. He said, sex. He said, men get breast cancer. And I did not know that.
Yeah, I have heard that.
And I was like, what? You're educating me on a whole bunch of stuff, but I don't need to know. I don't want to know it. You know, I didn't want to know.
Right.
So it was a little shocking.
How did you feel when you saw, you mentioned twice that pink bag. So when she came in with that, is that when it hit you that, she has something to do with cancer?
That's how
so we'll say that for that.
That's how I, you just kind of know. You know?
You knew it, but you were waiting to actually hear it, and hopefully it wasn't.
This is an excellent time to tell you that I had the most terrific caregivers at Martha Jefferson Hospital in Charlottesville and the Phillips Cancer Center. Awesome. Everything was, I don't know that you can say having cancer is a pleasant experience.
Right.
But they made it as easy as possible.
That's wonderful.
They were wonderful people.
And caregivers, they're so important. It's important to recognize them like you just did, and they make or break the situation. Mm-hmm. Because I've talked to some people with other situations where the caregivers, one or more of them, were awful, and it totally changed the experience. So I'm glad yours were, and that you're making note of all that they do.
I truly appreciated them.
And their job is hard, especially once you're diagnosed with cancer, because they're dealing with that all the time. That's their daily, it's a special job, maybe even a calling. I don't know. So I say on here, how did you feel when you heard those words? But I'm guessing, like at first, it's mainly shock.
It was.
Okay.
It was mainly shock, and once I had the biopsy, and I already. In my mind, by the time I had the biopsy, I knew.
Okay.
That I did. And I had not, I had talked to a friend about this, but I didn't want to tell anybody until I had the facts.
Right.
So, the doctor that I had, he told me that I would need to have he said it was induct, which was, he said, if somebody has to get cancer, that is the best kind to get.
Okay.
It's totally doable.
All right.
You can do this.
Okay.
And he was so encouraging. Even though in the back of my mind I wonder, you're a man. How do you how do you know this? But he was uplifting.
Right.
And he said, we're going to do radiation and we're going to do a lumpectomy.
Okay.
I did have to have 2 lumpectomies because the first time they didn't get a clean margin.
Okay.
So they did it a second time 1 week later.
Oh.
And then in May I started having radiation treatments.
Okay.
I knew I had so many people praying for me. And when I went to have my lumpectomy, I had people in the room praying with me at that time.
Wow.
And my anesthesiologist, who is so wonderful, I will never, ever forget her. And she came in, and I actually apologized because I said, I'm sorry. I know you were, she came in, but she stopped. And she, was very respectful. And I said, I'm sorry. I said, I'm just really nervous. And, my friends wanted to pray with me. And she said, it's okay, honey, because I pray for every one of my patients the night before that I'm going to deal with. And I was like, how reassuring that is to have a doctor that doesn't think they're God.
Right.
So, and I was terrified. So when we got to the OR, she was sitting behind me, and they put your arm out and do all this stuff and try to explain to you what's going on, but you're going to be asleep, so you don't really care. And I'm like, yes. And she said, are you okay? And I said, yeah. And then I said, will you pray with me? Will you pray for me?
Oh, wow.
And she said, of course. And because she had already said that she prayed. And I think, when I tell people that, they're like, what?
That's amazing.
And I think because, she walked in on us praying, that opened the door.
Right.
And so she did, and she said, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to pray for you, she said, and when I say amen, I'm going to hit the juice, and when you wake up, we'll be done.
Wow.
And that is exactly what happened. Exactly. And
Those
she
moments when
was,
you're just out.
yes, and she was my, I requested her when I found out I had to have the second lumpectomy.
Oh, wow.
And she was also my anesthesiologist for that one, too.
Oh, that's neat.
Yes. She said, well, I'm sorry we're back here again. Mm-hmm. She said, it's good to see you, but I'm sorry we're back here again.
Exactly,
That's
not
what
under
she
the
said.
circumstance.
Yes, yeah. So it was
what
great.
a blessing that God sends that your way.
Oh, my goodness.
I've heard of that happening a time or two. In fact, it happened to Dan, my husband now. It happened to him in one of his sinus surgeries. His doctor asked him if he could pray with him beforehand. I guess from something they said or prior conversation, he realized Dan was a Christian. And you're right. There's nothing quite like the comfort of your doctor praying over what he's getting ready to do, or in your case, anesthesiologist.
Yes.
I need to try twice to say that. So, what were some of the things that shocked you along the way? Well, or even what did you go through? You said you had to have radiation, and that was several weeks worth.
I had to have 33 radiation treatments.
Okay.
And I would, we live in Greene County, so it was about 25 minutes to get to Charlottesville the way I drive. But probably about 40 minutes, Okay. But I took a back road, and whenever my kids or whatever would go with me, they're like, no, we're not riding on the back road with you. So they would not. But I would go. I had 33 treatments, and so it took that amount of time to get there. And the radiation treatment might last, just getting ready for it, and then the treatment itself might last a minute or two.
Oh, really?
And then you're back in there getting redressed, and so sometimes I would be like, when you're doing this day in, day in, day in, day in, I start to have a little pity party, and But the way the hospital is set up, when you go into the cancer center, right to your right-hand side is the chemo lab. And I did have to go in there to talk to the oncologist and stuff, but I didn't, ever have to be treated there.
Right.
My area was in the basement, down in the bottom level was where we had radiation. So I got to walk right past that, and so that would like snap me back to reality, like at least you're not in there.
True.
I would get like, if I did try not to let my mind think on it too much, so I would like blast the radio, and I'd be listening to Casting Crowns and Praise You in the Storm and Who Am I, God please, help me out here, because I just, I didn't, people couldn't go with me every day.
Right.
And I worked during that time. I worked up to 1:00, and I had my treatment at 2:00. Then after my treatment, I would go home. So I tried not to miss work. And even though some people were like, oh, you should take off and you can do this. And I was like, and do what?
Right.
Sit at home, think about it?
Right.
Nobody wants to think about that.
And I think you're right, it depends on the person. I think some people do better keeping their life a little bit normal during hard times.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful. So did you get, from radiation, you get really tired?
Well, when I started radiation, it was May.
Okay.
And so I was close to the end of the school year. So I think we got out like the second week of June, and the last last treatment was like, my birthday's June 19th, and I remember that it was in that week because the nurse said, what a great birthday present. You don't have to come out here, anymore. And so just in the last 2 weeks or so, I got real tired, and I had like a burn, like under my arm and on my breast I had a burn. And I would sleep with like my arm propped up on the pillow because, if it touched, then it would kind of like stick.
Yes.
And that was, uncomfortable. And I remember the last week of school that I was there, I could not wear a bra. I had to, like wear big t-shirts and carry notebooks in front of me and stuff, because I felt bad about being there like that, but I still wanted to be there.
Do it.
Yeah, I still wanted to be there.
Well, that's noble of you to just keep going. I mean, you can tell you had
it's
some
not
determination.
Noble. No, it's not noble. It's like, no. Well, I was like, I don't know. That's not noble. It's stubborn.
You have to give yourself some credit, though, that you were, wanting to kind of like have things keep going the best that you could.
Yeah, I like you said, you just try to keep it as normal as possible, and I tried to do that.
Was there anything on that part of that cancer journey that kind of shocked you along the way, or things you weren't prepared for? Does that make sense?
I think what shocked me the most was that I was 46. What shocked me again was that no one in my family had breast cancer.
Okay.
I mean, we had people die of cancer in our family, but like they smoked and they got lung cancer, and that was a consequence,
Sure.
like that, but never like somebody just all of a sudden has breast cancer.
Okay.
So that was like, where's this coming from?
Right.
I had no idea. And that shocked me. Even though you're shocked anytime you hear
the words.
But the thing that I was least prepared for is how to tell my family.
Okay.
I just really had to think on that. I just did not know what to do. I didn't know how to tell anybody. And so at the time, 2 of our kids were still living at home.
Oh, okay.
And 2 were out on their own and had kids.
Okay.
And so it was easier to tell the ones that had kids and didn't live at home. Because I didn't, they weren't going to be in the thick of things.
Okay.
I mean, Krista was living in Alabama. and she was pregnant, and so I did not give any details, you know. It's just like, I'm going to have surgery, I'm going to have radiation, and that's it.
Okay.
You know, don't. But my youngest two that were living at home, my son was a senior, and they had just experienced a death of a administrator and a teacher at their school.
Oh, wow.
From breast cancer. And so it very much affected them, because they had just gone through that, and they were like, oh no, and you hear cancer and you think, okay, well now look what's going to happen, you know?
Yes.
And I remember, you know, when I came home from the surgeries, that my daughter, she laid on the floor beside the bed and slept there. So if I needed anything, she could get up and get it for me, even though, I mean, I had my lumpectomy and they sent me right on home, like nothing, you know?
Yes, they do send you home quickly today.
And it was, I mean, it was okay. But my son was getting ready to go on a missions trip to Costa Rica. Okay. And he did not want to go.
I guess
after that. And I'm like, do you know how many car washes and
we've gotten
bake
ready
sales
for this.
we've done? And you need to go. And so he was there when I had my surgery.
Okay.
And
did he get to go on that trip?
He did go on that trip. That was kind of like, you don't have a choice, but or you're getting on the plane.
That's sweet, though, that they felt that way towards you. Like, I don't want to leave your mom, and then Sarah to lay right there by the bed. That's precious.
Well, she was like, I don't want to roll over and hit you, and I don't want to, I'll just be right here, and if you need me. And I'm like getting out of the bed, stepping on her. but still, it was like, well, thank goodness, you know.
That's sweet. That's sweet.
I think that the hardest person the person that first came to my mind was my mom. You know, I know from experience that people in my family who've lost loved ones or parents, and kids are resilient. Right. You know, they'll bounce back. It's not going to be the same, but they'll bounce back. But I was really concerned about my mom because she had buried 2 daughters, and I was like, you know, this just doesn't seem fair. I don't want my mom to have to go through this a 3rd time. Right. So she was the one I was concerned about, and I couldn't tell her. I had to have my friend go. And I lived in Charlottesville, like I said, at the time, the Charlottesville area. So, you know, my friend who I had been communicating with about this all the time, Karen Tyler, you know her from Landmark, but she went to my mom's house. And when my mom said when she opened the door and she saw her there, she knew something was up. What's up, you know? But just, you know.
How'd your mom do?
She was there a lot, you know. She was there a lot.
That's great.
You know, coming up, and, you know, thank goodness it's not that far, you know. Right. Hour and a half maybe, you know. Right. So it's not, but she would come up there, and I remember, you know, waking up and she was right there, you know.
Probably somewhat therapeutic for her to feel like she could be involved or be there for you.
Yeah, I think so.
Absolutely.
You know, we're all control freaks in our family.
Me too. So I'm right there with you.
So I don't, you know, she couldn't really do anything, but I do remember when I was waking up one time, this was the second go round, but I remember waking up and I could hear her. She was like standing, and she was leaned over the bed like beside my pillow, and she was praying. Oh. And I was like, is she talking to me? But I was in a fog, you know? And I was like, were you talking to me? I didn't understand what you were saying. She said, no, I was praying. And I was like, okay, that's good.
Yes, that's all right. Keep talking to God.
Yeah, there you go. You're talking about me. You're not talking to me. So it was okay.
All right, and then I say, this might be better for the second time. However, we might flip these questions if it's better for you. But I ask, like, how did it affect you spiritually or mentally, physically, emotionally, your relationships, your job, whatever you want to tell us about. And do you think you want to answer that after the second cancer and as a whole, or
yeah, that's fine.
Or
that's
was
fine.
it more individual?
Because you don't realize at the time you're going through it. Like, I worked through it through the time, but that's just because, I mean, they offered to let me be off.
Okay.
But I chose not to be off.
Okay.
Now, the other thing I want to say is that, like, I could see God moving in different ways, and some things are just like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And then I'm like, why am I amazed? Because he does amazing things.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
But in November of 2011, I had been paying for a cancer policy for, like, a year and a half or 2 years or something. And I was like, now get this, it was $44. And I was like, I could put that $44 somewhere else, Like,
I get it, like trimming things down and figuring out your budget.
But then something happened that day, and the lady was in the office, and we were supposed to go up if we wanted to make any changes and sign papers and do all that. And this lady is wonderful. And she is also a Christian. So I didn't learn this until after, and I had my, something happened that day, and I didn't get to get up there. And I was like so ticked about that. I was like, oh gosh, now I got to pay $44 for another year. That's $300-something. I mean, I'm thinking it in my head. But then after I was diagnosed, I thought to myself, and I don't know why I didn't think about the cancer policy, because I wasn't, because I had a bazillion other things going through my head.
Right.
But the secretary in the office, she said, you have a cancer policy.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't cancel that. She said, I'll get in touch with her for you. And lo and behold, she did.
And that was a great supplement to help out, wasn't it?
Oh, my gosh. Because doctor bills are so expensive.
Yes.
I'm telling you, it was a lot of money. And I understand. I mean, I don't know what the answers are, but I can understand how people that do not have insurance would say, I give up. Because I'm never going to be able to pay this back, and I might as well give up now. Wow. But I was too stubborn for that. And I just, that cancer policy really helped. And I know that, God, I was so ticked then, but I can remember after thinking to myself, that was God.
That is an amazing story. That he prevented you from going and canceling that.
Yes.
And I think sometimes we forget that. Like, all the storms and all the struggles, all the suffering we go through, he knows we're going to go through it. And he's already made a way. He's already prepared what needs to be prepared.
Yeah.
And that's so amazing that he made sure that didn't happen at that time.
It is amazing, because when, like working at the school, and we'll read books, and the level kids that I was working with, we were reading these Magic Treehouse books, and it's like the same books every year. And the kids, they're like, oh, I'd say, okay, well, we'll read the next chapter tomorrow or something, and they're like, Miss Betty, what's going to happen? And I'm like, I can't tell you. And I think that's how God is.
Yes.
God knows what's going to happen.
Yes.
Not that I'm equating myself to God. I'm just saying
I know, but as an example,
I know what happens in the book.
I get it.
But the kids don't. And they're like so excited, or they get disappointed or something. And then I'm like, no, I can't tell you what's going to happen, because that'll ruin it for you.
That's a great example.
And then I'm thinking, yeah, that's like, I'm one of them kids. And I did not like it when I was going through it. But then I could see later.
And lesson learned, because I'm that person, like you said, a control freak, that when things don't go how you have it planned or how you wanted to do it, it's very easy to get mad or sad or whatever, angry, at the situation.
Yeah.
And when it may very well be God's hand in it.
Yes.
And I need to behave better toward it. That's a blessing. I'm glad you had that. And what a great way to think about how God takes care of us in the darkest times.
We appreciate you joining us today at Speak Your Grief with Sonia. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube as new episodes are added weekly. Thank you again for joining us as we unpack our grief. We hope you have been reminded that you are not alone in this journey.